What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today I have something very amazing for you guys. I'm going to reveal to you one top secret that most advanced players don't want you to know about the G pawn. So I'll be talking about the power of G4, which most of you guys didn't know that you can play in the early stages of the game to begin your attack before your opponent wakes up. So this is one of those videos you can't afford to skip, and without wasting much of your time, let's get started with our first opening out of 5 other openings that we are going to cover in this video. So we start with the Sicilian defense, where we go pawn to e4, then black responds with c5. Now listen, you guys, the Sicilian is somehow predictable in terms of where black will castle. So just remember to start thinking of increasing a lot of pressure on the king side, beginning with pawn to g4, but not right now. Let me show you where we play pawn to g4. So you first of all go knight f3, developing normally. Then as you can see in the Masters database, pawn to d6 is the top played move that you are likely to face even in tournaments. So as usual, just go ahead and trade off your d pawn, and right in this position, after black plays the top played move knight to f6, attacking your pawn, you defend it with knight c3. Now you already know our idea to play pawn to g4 very early in the opening stage, but before we do this, we want to make sure that black's e-pawn is on e6, obstructing the view of his light squared bishop so that we can freely play pawn to g4 next. So with this being said, what you want black to play is the Scheveningen variation. Even if black delays the move pawn to e6, and let's say they go pawn to a6, which is the most common Najaf variation, you can force them to play pawn to e6 by going bishop c4 first, as if you are targeting the weak f7 pawn. And now you can see with your own eyeballs that pawn to e6 is the top played move because they want to cover their f7 pawn just to avoid some unforeseen tactics. That's how you force them to get back to the Scheveningen variation. But anyways, let's see what to do if black plays pawn to e6, the Scheveningen variation. Guys, look at what masters play. Pawn to g4 immediately. Pawn to g4 makes a lot of sense because you haven't even castled short yet. Your main plan is to castle long someday. And what do we see here? Pawn to h6 is what everybody plays, stopping g5, but you can just go pawn to h4 if you want, or right away pawn to g5, messing up black's pawn structure on the king side, because remember, castling short is part of what most Sicilian players do. So you just managed to open up the king side for your king's rook as highlighted. That's the idea. Let's say knight c6. Now this is when you want to castle long immediately, so you go queen d2 immediately. If queen b6, you're double attacking your knight and also your pawn on b2. You can defend both by playing knight b3, and whenever you see knight e5, black wants to give you a check on f3 and win your queen. So this is when you play bishop e2, and if bishop e7, you simply castle long. And honestly guys, where is black going to castle? The king side is already messed up. We are ready to start attacking in case they castle short. And you may think the f2 pawn is free, but hey, we have bishop b5 check. That wins the queen. So that's just how powerful this strategy of playing pawn to g4 in the opening stage is. Now let's move on to the next opening and see how we can use this same idea. Opening number 2 in the Semi-Slav defense. Now this is where you start with the queen's gambit like this, and hey, you can see that pawn to c6 is the top played move by most masters. Well, after this, just go knight to f3. By the way, I have a very good course on the Semi-Slav, suitable for beginners and intermediate level players, but you guys need to know this as well. They'll play knight to f6, you go knight c3, and again, following the Lichess database, pawn to e6 is by far the top played move. Now wait a second. After seeing the Semi-Slav defense on the board, which is this triangle of pawns that you are seeing on the board, the next thing you have to wait for is black's development of the dark squared bishop, so that you can go pawn to g4 immediately. Let me show you. You can go pawn to e3 for example, and as per theory, they are going to play knight b7 because that's what they do in the Semi-Slav. So given a chance, you don't want to allow black's knight to sit on e4. That's why you need to play queen c2, which also carries with it the idea of long castling in the near future. And guys, you can see this is when most of your opponents will play bishop d6. So now that the dark squared bishop has moved, leaving the g7 pawn undefended, this is when we can temporarily sack our g pawn on g4 like this, intending to go g5. And if you think about it, This move also opens up the way for our king's rook. If knight takes, now this is when you go rook g1. Your aim is to take the g7 pawn. If they take your second pawn, on h2 you go knight takes. You simplify the game on the king side, and then you take that g7 pawn. Next, you want to win the h7 pawn. You think the h5 pawn may promote someday. Nope. At worst, you can just go rook h7, exchange rooks, and then go after this pawn, or simply go bishop d2. Just ignore that. h4, you castle long, h3, now you go rook h7. This pawn doesn't go anywhere. What I'm teaching you is theory, guys, so don't even be afraid of this. Anyways, so once again, after bishop d6, you just go ahead and play pawn to g4 since the g7 pawn is undefended. Again, if knight takes, you go rook g1, and if knight takes h2, you simplify the game this way and take on g7. And you can see these win rates, you guys. 60% win rate for white, 75%. Let's say if queen h4, you don't need to be in a rush of getting back your pawn. Just go bishop d2. If they play knight f6, you castle long, and this looks like you are just leaving your pawns hanging. Taking on f2 will be a big blunder by black, because you have rook g2. If they go queen h4 defending their bishop, well, are they? I don't think so, because you have bishop e1 attacking the queen and also paving way for your queen, double attacking the poor bishop on h2. For example, after something like queen h6, you just go ahead and take that free bishop, so you are up a full piece for nothing. So the only thing that you need to care about is when to sacrifice this g4 pawn. And I gave you enough hints in the Semi-Slav defense. It's when the dark squared bishop moves, leaving the g7 pawn undefended. Let's move on. Opening number 3, the Grob opening, or the Grob gambit. I just decided to feature this for fun, where you begin with pawn to g4 immediately. If they go d5, now you play bishop g2, temporarily sacrificing your g4 pawn, which almost everyone is going to take. You can see that's the top played move. And now this is when you go pawn to c4. That was the main idea, to double attack the d5 pawn. And here you can see the top played move is pawn to c6, defending that pawn, but I just recommend you simplify. By doing so, you are allowing yourself to go queen b3, wanting to win back this pawn on d5. And also the b7 pawn, since the light squared bishop is no longer guarding it. And what do we see again here? Pawn to e6 is by far the top played move. You can see with your own eyeballs, under your eyebrows. Pawn to e6 is a very big blunder, you guys, because of queen a4 check, which is Kaspar's signature move. You are going to win black's light squared bishop for free. So this is just a little trap for you to know in the Grob gambit. Anyways, just in case they don't play pawn to e6, which blunders their bishop, and rather go knight to f6, somehow guarding their bishop, or you can just go ahead and play queen takes b7. But even better is knight c3. Why do I give you double options? It's because I don't want you guys to be memorizing these moves. Pawn to e6 may be played, but just go queen takes b7. If knight bd7, you have knight b5, just putting more pressure on your opponent, which may increase their chances to blunder. So right now, material is equal. Stockfish only thinks black has a better position. Otherwise, this is very much playable at human level. Done. Opening number 4, where you can try out this early g4 pawn push, is in the Stonewall attack. So this is where you start with d4, black plays d5, you go e3, and let's say black plays the Slav. In the Stonewall attack, you don't want to go pawn to f4 immediately, because black can play bishop f5, controlling this diagonal which you want to control first. So you go bishop d3, stopping bishop f5, and now whenever they go knight d7, you know the next move they want to play is pawn to e5, breaking through the center. So this is when you play pawn to f4, over controlling the e5 square. If knight gf6, you know they want to sit on e4, so you simply go knight d2. If pawn to e6, you go knight gf3, let's say bishop d, castle short, very good. Now this is only move 7. What is the idea? The idea is to put your queen on f3, over controlling the e4 square, and also to enable this g4 pawn push. That's why we go knight e5. In this line, if pawn to c5, you know what to do in the Stonewall. Pawn to c3, creating a hiding place for your light squared bishop. If pawn to b6, that's when you go queen f3, over controlling the e4 square. If bishop b7, this is when you go pawn to g4. Same idea as you guys. This is for attacking players, not for lazy players. Let's say black plays something like pawn to a5. The idea may be to put the light squared bishop on a6 and skewer your light squared bishop to the rook. So you just go pawn to g5, minding your own business. They can't play knight e4 because they'll lose a pawn. So they play the top late move, knight e8. And now because of this g-pawn which you pushed, you have an opportunity to sacrifice your bishop on h7. After king takes, you go queen h5 check. Let's say king g8, you go. Finally, black cannot stop this upcoming checkmate sequence with his elbow or his stomach or his toes. Let's say bishop takes e5. You can just simply go rook h3. You just want to mate. If pawn to f5, black can't just do a thing here. They can't avoid this checkmate. And this is all possible because of our g-pawn, which was doing nothing on g2. So these are just some of the ideas that most advanced players don't really share with you. Let's look at another example in the same stone wall. So this time the game may start as follows: d4, d5, pawn to e3, and now instead of pawn to c6, which we looked at, let's say black plays knight to f6, the top plate move. You still go bishop d3, preventing bishop f5 first. And if you think knight e4 prevents you from going knight d2, well, as long as your pawn is still on f2, you have time to chase that knight away with f3. After knight f6, go knight d2 next. Anyways, so after you play bishop d3, you will see them playing pawn to e6. And this is when you want to go knight d2, over controlling your e4 square first. After pawn to c5, you create a hiding place for your light squared bishop, and whenever you see knight d7 or probably knight c6, just know pawn to e5 is a possibility. That's why you want to go pawn to f4, over controlling the e5 square. If bishop d6, you simply go knight g f3. Let's say castle short, castle short. Again, pawn to b6. What did we say in this position? You are stuck, you don't know what to do next. Just remember this idea of going pawn to g4, but it can only be attained if you play queen f3 first, which is why you have to go knight e5, creating this new opportunity, ensuring that your queen is active first, after which you now go pawn to g4 immediately. Same idea, you guys. Knight d7, because we had pawn to g5 coming. You can go pawn to g5 if you want, no need to memorize. But again, queen h3 is a move, wanting to checkmate on h7. If pawn to g6, you can go queen h6. There's nothing that can chase your queen from this square. Let's say pawn to f6. If you exercise some patience, you'll be able to see this knight sacrifice. That's if you do your math very well. Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, knight takes, and queen takes g6 check will force black to play king h8 and give you chance to lift your rook as highlighted to checkmate black, which they can't avoid. So this was all possible because of this g4 pawn push that scared black's knight on f6. Let's move on. Opening number 5 in the Italian game Gioco Pianissimo or Gioco Pianissimo, where you begin with pawn to e4. Let's say black plays e5, knight to f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, and now instead of castling short, going into the deuce gambit or playing pawn to d3 right away, you simply go pawn to c3. So you start controlling the center right from the word go. Black has to play something else like knight to f6, attacking your pawn that you have to defend with d3. If pawn to d6, the top played move, now you go bishop b3. I covered some of these lines in my new Italian course, which I highly recommend that you guys get. I explained all these moves in detail in a way that even a layman could understand. So this is a prophylactic move. If black plays the top played move, bishop g4, you have to say, yes, my dedicated students know why this is a mistake in the long run, because you have pawn to h3 first. Again, if bishop h5, the top played move, you go knight bd2. Your plan is very simple, to go knight f1 someday and put that knight on g3. And again, I'm only playing against the Lichess database, you guys. Even in the Masters database, I think the top played move, yep, it's castle short in this position. And this is for some of you guys who think I just make up these moves. In my mind, this is what people play in real games. So in this opening, the secret is not just to think about castling short early. You replace castle short with queen e2. You could have also played knight f1, but anyways, let's say pawn to a5 or pawn to a6. This is what people play. So pawn to a6, you can go pawn to a4 to stop b5 if you want, but this is when it makes a lot of sense to go pawn to g4, you guys. When the dust settles, you begin your attack right away. If bishop g6, you go knight f1, you haven't yet castled short, so your king is not at risk of facing death. If pawn to d5, you go knight g3, let's say pawn takes, you take back with your pawn, you have no weaknesses or whatsoever on your side. If queen e7, the top played move, I mean you have so many moves, knight h4, knight f5 immediately, or my favorite bishop g5, because if pawn to h6, the top played move, now you can simply go knight h4 and win black's light squared bishop on g6, since the f pawn is pinned by our light squared bishop to the king. This also attacks black's queen, by the way. If queen e8, you go pawn to h4, you just want to open up the h file for your king's rook, and next you are going to win black's rook on f8. At any time you can castle long if you want. Ladies and gentlemen, this g4 idea is something that you need to start looking out for in most of these openings. So the most important thing is timing. Looking for the best time when to push pawn to g4, especially if you ensure that you have no weaknesses on the center of the board and that your king is secured. That's when you can go pawn to g4. The link to this study's Master PJN is in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about this study. So leave your comments in the comment section down below so that I can also learn of your existence. Yesterday I posted a meme video for the weekend which most people didn't seem to like because they thought I was gonna stop making these kinds of tutorials. To be honest, I was very happy to read all your comments, guys, and your words of encouragement, because it is you guys who control this channel. In case you didn't know, you do, and that is very helpful. So always leave your comments in the comment section down below so that I can meet your expectations and satisfy your eyeballs. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked this, hit the like button and do subscribe if you're new. Until next time, bye bye.